Hey, it's been a minute. The opening ceremony for the Paris 2024 Olympics is just a few days away. But before the Olympics start, I wanted to look at some of the reasons why no one wants to host the Olympics. And this is kind of a topic of discussion right now because right before the 2024 and 28 bids were in for where they're going to be, a lot of countries actually withdrew their proposal and their nomination for the Olympics, which is kind of odd, but we're going to learn about it today. But make sure to leave a like on today's video and subscribe down below as we're trying to reach 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's get into it. The good old javelin.
Down the back stretch. It's September 2017, and members of the International Olympic Committee are gathered to pick the city that will host the...
This was in 2017? This was 7 years? I guess it makes sense why it would be so long ago, but 2017?
2024 Olympic Games.
My goodness.
The biggest decision this group makes. They've put representatives from the two competing cities on stage for their announcement.
With the unanimous decision
Paris
we
and
took,
Los Angeles.
But everyone here already knows who won.
Please raise your hand.
Every 4 years, more than 5 million people attend the Olympics.
How does that work?
Over 3 billion watch it on TV.
Okay.
It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity for one city to show off. And the competition has typically...
I'm not going to lie. Like the Olympics, back before 2004. What a time to be alive. I'm sure you guys just saw the shot where there's a whole bunch of countries and they have all their flags. That is so cool.
Been fierce. 12 cities applied to host the 2004 games before the IOC picked Athens, Greece. 10 applied for 2008, won by Beijing, China.
Man, dude, imagine in Cairo in the middle of July in August. Toronto would be an interesting one. I guess the 2028 ones is going to be Mexico, US, and Canada in a way. So this is, wow, okay. Well, in Paris, even in 2008, they even put a bid.
But since then, interest has been waning. 9 cities applied for 2012,
that's just one less.
Then 7, then 5, and for 2024, only 2 were left when it was...
That's embarrassing. I think over the past 2 decades, I think people are either starting to realize what a waste this is of not only time and money, but then also just the general cost. Because things are getting so much more expensive to actually build things like this.
It's time for a vote.
My goodness.
So the IOC did something it's never done before.
Paris 24, Los Angeles 28.
They just said have it. They just said have it.
The IOC was so concerned that nobody would bid to host the games in 2028 that it simultaneously awarded the games 2024 to Paris and 2028 to Los Angeles. They used
So you put a bid in for this one, but you didn't get that one, so you're the runner-up, so you can just have that one. Love that.
to be a strong demand to host. Now there isn't.
The Olympics are the most prestigious sports event in the world.
I gotta head back to Cairo.
Why doesn't anyone want to host it anymore?
I love this, I love this idea. Why no one wants to host the Olympics.
So the Olympics have actually had this problem before. They originally came up with this idea of rotating the games around to different cities back in 1896 because they had to.
We didn't have international jet travel and we didn't have international telecommunications.
Andrew Zimbalist wrote a book about the economics of hosting sports mega events like the Olympics.
So it was necessary in order to spread the games internationally and get the whole world to participate and enjoy them.
As the games grew,
Imagine in 1896, you're trolleying in on a horse and carriage to go, I don't know. I don't even know where it would be hosted back then. What?
IOC kept this tradition, eventually developing a competition where cities would submit bids and it would vote
Tokyo
on
way back then, okay.
But when it opened bidding for the 1984 games, not a single city wanted to host because the last few hadn't gone very well.
They do say history does repeat itself, so...
Local political protests had turned violent during the 1968 games in Mexico City, and terrorists killed 11 Israeli athletes at the 72 Munich games.
Invade the Olympic Village, taking 9 Israeli athletes hostage and killing 2 others in their room.
Both incidents showed cities that hosting could be politically risky, or even deadly. When construction problems and corruption led Montreal to spend more than 13 times their budget.
13 times? That's insane!
They began to view it as financially risky too. So in the late 70s, the IOC was barreling towards disaster until one city offered to save them.
Woo!
Under one condition. Los Angeles did not want to spend a lot of money.
Woo!
To do
How
that,
does that-
it offered
oh, yeah, I
to
was
use
gonna say, how do
venues
they
it
do that?
already had instead of build
Okay.
new ones.
Right.
The LA Coliseum, where the USC football team played, the Forum, where the Lakers played,
Yeah.
UCLA's gymnasium and tennis center, and the athletes could just stay in the college dorm rooms.
Imagine like a college student like staying on campus. They're like, "Now you gotta get out. You gotta move out. Pack your things. You have 2 days."
Since the IOC didn't have a choice, it said yes, and was soon glad it did.
We had Iron Man in the '84 Olympics before GTA 6. Come on now. Woo!
The '84 LA Games were a success in almost every way.
Probably one
but
of the best
especially
Olympics.
financially. It only cost around $1 billion in 2015 dollars. And
Wait.
LA
Wait, okay. So wow.
even made a profit. This should have
Wow.
become the model for future Olympic host cities, but instead
It
it
did.
sparked the problem that is plaguing the Olympics today.
It did not.
It's
They-
interesting
they
how many of
didn't
these
listen.
sports and politics stories really boil down to economics. If you recall, the Premier League story is a story about a warped economic system. The NFL is so successful because it created a new economic model for sports leagues. If you haven't seen those videos yet, give them a watch. If you haven't subscribed to Search Party, now's your chance.
Make sure to subscribe to Search Party. I'm watching their video. They put obviously all the work in. I'm just reacting, giving a good time. So make sure to go subscribe. I'll leave a link down in the description to this video and the subsequent videos about the Premier League and NFL.
We publish every 2 weeks this summer, so I've been working from all over the place. I've been writing scripts on trains. I've been animating on
Trains,
airplanes.
okay.
I'm headed out this afternoon on a really exciting reporting trip, but I'm going to be in a hotel the whole time. That's why I'm really excited to work with Surfshark.
Right.
Surfshark's a
right,
VPN that's going to
Okay. Sorry. We're not. No ads.
LA did such a good job hosting the 1984 Olympics
Right.
that it re-inspired cities to want to
That's
host
actually
again.
sick.
For the 1992 games, 6 cities submitted
Right.
bids, then 6 again for 96,
Okay.
8 for 2000, then a whopping 11 for 2004. As more cities competed, the IOC regained
Wow.
leverage over them
Wow,
again.
they really just went right up the
But
curve.
instead of sticking to
And
the
now
LA
we're
model,
back.
it began demanding more. Between 1992 and 2020, the IOC added dozens of new sports to the games.
Oh, sorry. For some reason I thought this was like generally like the money that they're spending. I'm like, we're starting to go up here.
This required more venues and housing for more athletes,
Right.
which host cities were primarily responsible for paying for. As the
Right.
competition intensified, cities felt increasing pressure to make their bids more attractive. The most effective way to do that was to build new venues. Sydney built 15 new venues plus housing for 10,000 athletes.
Wow.
Athens built 22 new venues, and Beijing built 12. All of this construction made hosting the games really, really expensive.
But maybe also exciting. I don't know. Like, it makes sense for like LA to host it again, especially with LA, having new stadiums, the Kia Forum obviously being like a big event and big arena there. I don't know. It just makes sense now because like things are a little bit more put in place for LA, and obviously having like the Coliseum and other different venues around the country to host it. So it does make a lot more sense maybe now that like it's not going to be as expensive for 2024. I would have never thought that the USA would never have a spending problem when it came to the Olympics, just with our history. So that's good news.
This chart shows how the cost of the games skyrocketed over the last 30 years,
Right.
reaching between $10
Right.
and $25 billion in
Right.
the last decade.
I want to add one big caveat to this chart, though. It only includes sports-related costs to the games. It doesn't include things like new public transportation or development projects that most all these cities spent money on for the Olympics. If we include some of those costs, these bars are actually way higher. So, for example, some estimate that Beijing spent more like $45 billion for their 2008 Summer Games. Russia spent more like $51 in 2014, and Tokyo's bill is more like $35 billion. No matter what number you use, though, all of these cities went way over their initial budget, which the bidding process incentivizes them to keep artificially low.
What they have to do is
Insane.
make initial statements about the intentions and the plans that are very reduced. Once the politicians say, yeah, okay, we'll go along with this, then they start adding the bells and whistles. And those can be very, very substantial.
The revenue cities generate from ticket sales, TV contracts, and sponsorships only cover a fraction of these costs, meaning these governments and really their taxpayers are on the hook for the rest.
So it doesn't look like a good economic deal.
But host
It's just not great. It doesn't seem like a great idea to be hosting the Olympics. I guess it makes sense, but it does not seem like a great idea. My goodness.
Cities have known for decades that they'll likely lose money in the short term. Instead, many have been told that hosting the Olympics is an investment that will pay off in the future.
Okay, so this is the IOC's webpage where they list the benefits of hosting the games. And they use this word legacy a lot. And by legacy, they mean things that will continue to benefit your city long after the Olympics are over.
Take sports facilities. Beijing justified spending around $460 million on this new 90,000-seat stadium by planning for a local pro soccer team to use it after the Olympics. London did the same when it built this stadium. At first, seems like a good idea. Other legacy projects are meant to benefit even more people. Russia spent $8.7 billion on a new rail and highway link into Sochi for its Winter Games. And Rio de Janeiro spent $4 billion on a new subway line connecting a beach community to its Olympic Center. The most commonly touted legacy benefit is that hosting an Olympics is a great way to kickstart your city's growth.
What historically,
I can see what I guess they're talking about. It's just kind of like another reason to do it. It's like, oh, we'll get to it. But now that like the Olympics are rolling around, we kind of like need that now. And then obviously afterwards, people can then use it. I guess the hard part is, I guess there is a rather history. And I hope that they get into it, that there is some part of a history lesson to be done where like most venues aren't being used anymore. So, that's a little sad.
came out of the public relations with regard to the Olympics was that this was the most wonderful thing that could ever happen to a city. It puts your city on the world map, so it will increase tourism, it will increase commerce, it will increase foreign investment. And that story turns out not to be true.
Right. I'm sure most people probably heard like London. Most people probably heard of Rio de Janeiro. I'm sure most people probably heard of Tokyo. Hey Siri, give me a random city in Belgium. Okay, the capital and largest city is Brussels, right? Most people probably know what Brussels is if you're old enough. But what about if we said like, oh, we can't wait to go to the Antwerp Games. The 32 Antwerp Games. Where's that? Belgium, I guess.
Let's start with tourism. A 2004 study found that after experiencing a bump in tourism leading up to their respective games, Atlanta, Sydney, and Seoul all saw it fall afterwards. In his book, Andrew cites a 1996 study on 3 Olympic Winter Games that found that the long-term impact on tourism was between non-existent and very modest.
Right.
And a 2010 study that found little evidence of any benefit to tourism of hosting an Olympic Games.
Right.
And considerable evidence of damage. In other words, being on TV can backfire.
If the weather is particularly too warm, or if it's too cold, if there are security incidents, if there are bad stories about the traffic, some cities are able to maybe help their image, but other cities are hurting their image.
Many legacy infrastructure investments haven't paid off either. Russia's rail project is now considered an epic failure.
Right.
And Andrew argues that while Rio's subway line benefits some residents, what the city really needed was a line serving the lower income neighborhoods inland. But that's not where the Olympics were.
The typical case was that the IOC comes along and they say, we need these 30 venues and we want you to put them in a way so that transportation is facilitated and other conveniences are allowed. And so what the city would have to do is contort itself in order to accommodate the IOC.
Empty stadiums are a particularly visible sign of this mismatch.
Yeah.
That Beijing Stadium had about 80,000 more seats than what the local soccer team could fill, so it backed out. Now the stadium sits mostly empty, costing the city some $10 million a year to maintain.
Right. Right, like host a concert there. Do something. You have a track. You could obviously host many track events, and I'm sure that they do. Come on. Like, you could do something with this. I'm sure if you sat down and like gave 2 hours of your time, I'm sure you could come up with something to do with this arena.
This is what's called a white elephant, and there are now dozens of them across Olympic host cities.
The beach.
These are venues left over from the Athens 2004 Games. And ESPN found that 12 out of 27 venues in Rio de Janeiro had not held an event a year after it hosted the Olympics. For many residents, white elephants are evidence that hosting the games is a waste of money.
The idea that had been out there forever and ever, this is wonderful news for the city. They get to do this. No, more often than not, it's going to be the opposite.
By 2015, city residents were ready to do something about it. The IOC had 6 cities bidding for the 2024 Games until protests forced Boston and Hamburg to drop out.
Really? Boston? Like Boston dropped out? I've been to Boston. There ain't no way that they're ever hosting it there, that's for sure.
Mayor in Rome fulfilled a promise to shut down its bid. Then more than 260,000 people signed a petition that led Budapest to drop out as well.
260,000? Hey Siri, what is the population of Budapest? Okay, that is a significant amount. There's nearly 1.7 million, so that is a considerable amount.
It left the IOC with just 2 bidders, and once again, little leverage.
Wow. They're like, hey,
The
Paris.
IOC has since passed reforms that it says reduce the cost of hosting, largely by requiring hosts to use existing and temporary venues, like LA did back in 1984, and allowing them to partner with other cities. As of now, Paris doesn't look like it will blow its budget, and LA's organizing committee is saying that the city can again pull off an on-budget Olympics. But
which is
the
very
question is,
true.
if they do, could it spark another bidding war?
I don't know if we'll go into a big cycle like we did after the 84 games. I do think it's possible that there'll be a small turn. It'll appear less undesirable than it has.
The IOC has also stopped taking bids and instead negotiates with cities privately. It picked Milan and Cortina, Italy, over Stockholm for the 2026 Winter Games, and it gave Brisbane, Australia, the 2032 Summer Games. But some are arguing for a more permanent solution.
I think it's perfectly plausible.
Just give it to LA. LA has it down. We have it down. We have it locked down like sports, kind of like our pastime here in America. Just hand us the torch. Literally, hand us the torch. We will do it every 4 years.
Possible to think about building the Olympic Shangri-La with its 35 or 40 venues for the Summer Games, smaller number for the Winter Games, in one place.
Some believe Greece, the historical home of the Olympics, would make a good permanent host. Others have mentioned LA since it has so many venues and has done so well in the past. A permanent spot would eliminate.
And you're telling me if they didn't spend 2 hours coming up with an idea for a stadium in Beijing, I came up with that in 2 seconds. Okay? Come on now.
White elephant projects save cities from going into debt and reduce the game's environmental footprint. But it could also reduce much of the excitement around each new Olympics.
It's not going to be easy to go to a model that makes environmental sense and economic sense. But I do think it makes sense to talk about it and put it out there as someplace that we should be heading.
Depending on how the next few Olympics go,
I like
it might be the only direction left.
Idea. I like the Greece idea. Having it constantly there.
All right, thanks everyone so much for watching episode 15. That's also our 1 year anniversary of Search Party. We have over...
Congratulations on your 1 year anniversary, by the way, Search Party, aka, I'm assuming Sam? I'm assuming this is Sam. Well, anyways, Nationers, we learned a lot during this video. I hope you guys know that every 4 years you will see me in LA for the Olympics. Until I die. Subscribe!